when they went to remove the tumor. I'm obsessed with her, though. I'm obsessed with the way that she looks. I'm obsessed with all of the plastic surgery she's had. I mean, I want her to adopt me. She's my new favorite person, staring at that cloud, saying it looks like Trump.
Also, she misspelled both names in her name, Mary Crowley, both incorrect. And also, she literally said in this photo right here, she said, and it was the only cloud in the sky. And in the photo, there are other clouds. This is the perfect example of the morons that are given platforms in this country these days. There's 6 other clouds I can point to in this photo, but there's one circled that makes it the only. I mean, oh my, this just in, I was just handed a paper. Wow, Mary Crowley, the second leading candidate now, taking over the killer for the Republican presidential nomination. Wild. Congrats to Mary Crowley, Republican presidential Mary and Crowley, all misspelled.
I know we talk all day long about how idiotic these elected officials in the Republican Party are, but to see this guy sit back in his dirty shirt and talk about how he found a secret passageway from Mount Rushmore to the evil cabal in Washington, D.C., and knowing that he gets to make decisions about people's lives every day, it just makes me feel... It makes me laugh so hard while also being more depressed than I've ever felt in my life.
Yes, and also I'd like to lastly point out Mary Crowley's book is called From Glory to Glory, which is not a transition and should not be 2 words. It should just be called glory at that point. You can't go from one thing to the same thing.
Oh, she's definitely my new favorite person. I'm gonna read her.
I have virtual shows, benglebe.com or nowherecomedy.com to get them.
Thank you for joining me today, Ben. And thank you everybody for tuning in and watching us today. We'll be back with more Watch List, same time, same place tomorrow, but stick around because the main show is coming up right after this.
All right, well, Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. So we do have Death Star bills advancing throughout the country.
We have them.
We have them. They're the Republican bills that are going to obliterate parts of our democracy. On the other hand, we had a great victory for democracy today. That's the most important story. And I'm not even talking about the Squishmallows. We're going to talk about it later in the program.
Squishmallows, please get it together.
Mallows, okay. Well, it depends. You say mallow, I say mallow, or tomato. Anyway, and abortion, interesting news. Okay, so that's later in the program. But first, another major piece of news brought to you by America's News Anchor.
Listen, you guys knew we were going to talk about this, so let's do it.
This totally wins my case, Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information. Look, since president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't.
You just heard what appears to be a pretty damning piece of evidence against Donald Trump in the classified documents case against him. Now, the recording you just heard, or a portion of the recording you just heard, dates back to July of 2021, when he was at a meeting in his Bedminster, New Jersey club. He was talking in a room with an individual who's working on his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows' book, his memoir, along with two other staffers. And Trump knew he was being recorded. Nonetheless, he decided to talk about a classified document that presumably was in his possession as he was talking to the individuals in the room. Before we hear more from that recorded audio, which was later leaked and CNN obtained it, it's important to understand the context of what they are discussing. So the conversation centered on Donald Trump's foreign policy toward Iran when he was in office. The recording referenced in the federal indictment against Trump features Trump describing a multi-page document that he alleges is about possibly attacking Iran. He was apparently frustrated that the press was reporting that General Mark Milley was the one who was trying to keep Trump under control in order to prevent a hot war with Iran. Trump argues that it was the other way around, and he presents what he refers to as a classified document to the individuals in the room as he's making this argument. Without further ado, here's the leaked audio.
Well, with Milley, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack Iran. Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look, this was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him. Wow. We looked at some. This was him. This wasn't done by me. This was him. All sorts of stuff. It's pages long. Look. Wait a minute. Let's see here. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I just found. Isn't that amazing? This totally wins my case, Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information.
Highly secret, confidential. Important to keep that phrase in mind. And here is, I think, the most damning part of that leaked audio. And then we'll go to you, Cenk. Let's watch.
Look at this. You attack. And
Hillary would print that out all the time,
she'd send it to Anthony Weiner, the pervert. By the way, isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I was just saying, because we were talking about it. And he said he wanted to attack Iran and what? These are the papers. This was done by the military, given to me. I think we can probably, right?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to figure out
declassified. Since president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't, but this is classified.
Now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's so cool. I mean, it's so. Look, we here and I have. And you probably almost didn't believe me, but now you believe me.
No, I believe
it's incredible, right?
No,
hey, bring some Cokes in, please.
Bring some Cokes in, please. That's my personal favorite part of that recording. And again, Trump knew he was being recorded, but he still felt that it was a great opportunity to talk about his possession of classified documents, which Cenk referred to as highly confidential, and then talked about how he could have declassified those documents as president, but can no longer do so now that he is no longer in office.
I have 2 points that I loved in that. One was the staffer going, now we have a problem. He's like, it's highly classified and secret and I can't declassify it. Here, you wanna look?
Oh my God.
And she's like, now we have a problem. Okay, so my second favorite quote was, Trump has been saying to Brett Baier and others, there's just newspapers and magazines. They're not classified. I mean, I said it was classified, but it's not classified. Well, first of all, there are no newspaper articles or magazines that are classified because they're public by definition. But if you weren't convinced yet, the audio tape, he's like, this is him. This is him, Milley, this is him. Look at all these pages and pages of documents, this is him. Yeah, Milley did not write our invasion plans of Iran in the New York Times or on Newsweek.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Yeah, that's such a great point. And so what Cenk is referencing is, some of the lies that Trump told prior to CNN airing the audio you just heard. And part of that conversation took place during an interview with Brett Baier. So that happened a few weeks prior to CNN publishing that audio that you just heard. So why don't we take a quick look at that snippet from that interview, just so you have the full context of where that lie comes from.
That wasn't a document, Brett. There was no document. That was a massive amount of papers and everything else talking about Iran and other things. And it may have been held up or may not, but that was not a document. I didn't have a document per se. There was nothing to declassify. These were newspaper stories, magazine stories, and articles.
So there you have it. That was a lie. The idea that Mark Milley had an outline of this invasion in Iran in a news article is ridiculous.
There's literally only one place where we would have our secret plans to invade Iran, in top secret classified documents. We don't make those public. In fact, if they're public, show me where they are. Because he says it's not, now his new thing is it's not classified, it was just newspapers and magazines. Okay, then great, show me where it is.
Okay.
Okay, there is no such thing. Of course but like guys, at this point, the right wing has basically given up. They're just like, they're using the third grade thing of like, yeah, I might have done that, mommy, but Susie also did it.
The whataboutism.
Exactly, right? And every parent knows this, and that's why he's a petulant child.
Well, to that point, that recording gave me a little hint into his motivations in keeping the classified documents. I don't think this is necessarily the full reason why Trump would want to take those classified documents home with him and refuse to hand them over once the feds demand that he hands them over. He wants to maintain or possess some level of evidence to clear his name because he believes that everyone's constantly lying about him, right? So in this case, look, honestly, I'm skeptical that Mark Milley wasn't the one pushing him to go to war with Iran, right? I would honestly, I think it's totally believable that Milley would be pushing for Iran. So maybe Trump wanted to maintain those documents in an effort to provide evidence against some of the mainstream media narratives against him. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. So let me clarify a couple things. First of all, on Damage Report this morning, I said the same exact thing as Anna, where I said, look, this is in one aspect of the case, not the legal aspect, but the sense of how damaging it is politically, the slightest little exoneration potentially. Why? Like Trump is screaming, I'm exonerated, it was a perfect call. No, you're toast legally. You're definitely guilty. You had classified documents, you knew they were classified, you kept them anyway, etc. But I always assumed that since Trump is obsessed with money, that he took the documents to sell them. And then we've talked about that. But now when you look at that tape or you hear that tape, you think, well, no, maybe it could be a couple other reasons. Like never underestimate how unintelligent Donald Trump is. It's possible that he wanted to keep them to prove his case, as Anna just pointed out. Or as I said earlier today, just because he wanted to show off because he's a child. And so, and you see in the tape, he's like, oh, you want to see the highly classified top secret documents? And so it doesn't exonerate him as a human being or legally, but I now think maybe he didn't want to sell them, right? Maybe he was just an idiot. But let's also keep in mind, he might have wanted to sell them. And remember, Jared Kushner's son-in-law got $2 billion right after the election from Saudi Arabia, and Donald Trump got millions upon millions through the Live Golf tournament from the Saudis right after the election. So they've already been paid. We don't know if it was for the documents or just because the Saudis didn't like the fact that the Saudis did like the fact that Trump let them chop up a Washington Post reporter.
So I have a little bit of a, I don't know, maybe a spicy take. I don't know how people are gonna react to it. But I came across a story today about Jen Psaki, who's now a host over at MSNBC.
Of course.
And she floated a theory. She speculated that Trump took the documents because he might have wanted to show the documents to dictators, which he has so much, admiration for, right? I just think that it's a little irresponsible to just pull random speculative theories out of your, out of your you know what. Can we just wait and find out? Like there's an investigation happening as we speak, and I think you start losing, well, with someone like Jen Psaki over at MSNBC, I mean, she's literally a political operative. She worked for Biden's administration, but it just starts making people look kind of unhinged and conspiratorial. We don't know
Yeah,
why.
but let me make a distinction here. So first of all, there is no distinction between MSNBC and the Biden administration. That's they're one organism. Okay, now on to the distinction in the speculation. There is some evidence that he took them home to brag. That's the tape. He's bragging on the tape, so there's some evidence of that. Is it definitive? Not at all. There's some evidence that he wanted to prove his case, and that's why he kept some of the documents, the one Anna just said, because he says it on the tape. So again, not at all definitive, but maybe, could be that at least there's one piece of evidence. And there's some evidence that he kept them to get paid because he already has gotten paid a spectacular amount of money from the Saudis. So that doesn't mean that it's definitive at all, not even close, right? But it's one piece of evidence. Is there any evidence that he has given them to dictators for free or for giggles or for, no, there's not one piece of evidence to that. That's just speculation out of thin blue air, right? So I think that there is a real distinction there between those things. But I think it's also human, Anna, for people to speculate when a guy takes home top secret documents for no goddamn reason and exposing himself to massive liability and criminal consequences, etc. I think it's legitimate to ask, why the hell did he do that?
No, I understand. I think part of what I feel burned by was the narratives that were drummed up in corporate media in regard to Trump's relationship with Putin and Russian interference in the election. They would take something and they would take two different elements of that story. There'd always be like the missing piece, right? Connecting the dots that really prove that Trump was working with Putin to interfere in the 2016 election. But nonetheless, a lot of that was drummed up and a lot of weird connections were made to kind of give the appearance that it was like an open and shut case, that Trump definitely was working hand in hand with Putin. There was definitely election interference taking place, that there was collusion with Trump and Putin. And honestly, the evidence didn't bear that out. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but look, again.
And it was overplayed. There was a lot of speculation in the press. And I just think it's irresponsible. Just stick to the facts. There's an investigation taking place. If you're gonna speculate, be clear that you're speculating.
Yeah, see, that's my line.
And don't plant seeds in people's heads, which then germinate into insane conspiracy theories that are not born out of any evidence.
Yeah, I hear you. So, but I think we got to be able to make distinctions. So first of all, to be clear, the Russians did interfere in the 2016 election. It's just that Trump did not participate with them.
Exactly.
There was not a coordination.
Right.
So I want to be clear about the facts that we definitely know, right? And then in terms of, since the Russians appeared to be helping him, and it turns out they were, that leads to understandable speculation as to why. And so, but then when you go into that speculation, you have to base it on something, but most importantly, you have to clearly identify it. You can't just say, oh yeah, Trump did it, or oh yeah, the Trump is getting paid by the Saudis, we know for sure. No, you don't know that for sure, right? So I think you could have a normal human conversation about it, especially on talk shows, as long as you're being clear about what's facts and what's speculation.
The one thing that's also clear to me in this story is how Trump has lied over and over again about his possession of these classified documents, and he's changed his story on multiple occasions. So just to give you an example of other lies that he's told, specifically in regard to these classified documents pertaining to foreign policy toward Iran, in a recent interview, Trump claimed that he was unaware of the Iran document being among the materials in the boxes recovered at Mar-a-Lago by the FBI and Justice Department. He also continued to claim that everything he took with him was declassified. I mean, lies, absolute lies. So from that audio, it is abundantly clear that he is in possession of those classified documents pertaining to Iran. He is talking about them. He is talking about his inability to declassify them now that he is no longer in office. It's just on record. It's so clear. And so those who are trying to provide cover for him are now twisting themselves into insane, ridiculous pretzels, and they're gonna have to continue doing so because this isn't the only recorded audio that prosecutors have. So I wanna talk about that a little bit as well. So prosecutors' 49-page indictment outlined two instances in which Trump disclosed sensitive papers in unsecured environments post-presidency to individuals who lack the necessary security clearances required to view any classified information. Let's go to graphic 6 here. The second instance, so the second instance is one that we haven't heard yet, described in the indictment was an August or September 2021 meeting where Trump showed an unnamed representative of his political action committee a classified map of country B and expressed to the individual that he shouldn't be sharing the map.
Oh, it's devastating.
What are you doing?
Okay, so guys, look, at this point, I don't think it's a question anymore as to whether he's guilty or not. And I say that not as a matter of law and evidence, that we had crossed that bridge a while back. Now that evidence, we don't just know that it exists, we've heard it, right? In a sense, we've become a part of the jury, at least in the court of public opinion. But you can also tell because, man, right-wingers, including right-wing media, including Fox News, they are struggling mightily to try to justify this. And they just can't. And a lot of them are going, okay, yeah, he kind of did it. And so then they, but somebody else did it, but this, but that. And now the only question that's remaining is, how's he gonna get out of it? Not whether he did it or not. And there's 3 ways he can get out of it. Jury nullification, one of the jurors on the case is MAGA and goes, I don't care. I just don't care.
Yeah, that's a good point. That could happen.
I'm
you
on
just
a jury.
Need
I'm
one
supposed
juror to disagree.
Yeah, one juror is MAGA, and he goes, "No, I'm not convicting him. I don't care if he shot someone on 5th Avenue, and you have tape of it. I'm not convicting him." Okay, so that's totally possible. Judge nullification doesn't normally happen, but there's kind of a MAGA judge here, so she could be like, "I toss out all the evidence." I'm exaggerating, but she could toss out critical evidence. At the end, she could even say the jury's decision is unjustifiable by the law. You're free to go, and so that could happen.
That would be a crazy scenario.
But it has happened before. It's not like unprecedented, okay? And then the last thing is politician nullification, where either he wins, another Republican wins, or maybe even Biden wins and they pardon him. So, so you think Biden won't pardon? I mean, we've gone through this many times. So that is.
Can we nullify Biden?
I know, well, there is a way to do that, it's called a primary. So there are 3 possible outs he has left, but none of them are legal. He billion% did it, and at this point, this is as close as I've ever seen to the right wing going, uncle, yeah, he did it, okay? So, and last thing, guys, that Iran document that's top secret that Trump told you about, he never returned it. We still don't know where it is. It was not at Mar-a-Lago, it was in New Jersey. So this dude's still hiding documents.
I flushed it down my golden toilet.
Yeah,
that's what I do.
Speaking of golden and toilet, by the way, to the earlier conversation, I think we have a ton of credibility because we call out people on our side all the time. It's the Steele dossier that people that on MSNBC, et cetera, were going nuts over. I told you I didn't believe that for a second, right? Yeah. And we said that from day 1 to now. So why, by the way, they're like, oh, Trump is into golden showers and stuff. Like, no, he's not. He's a germaphobe.
Right.
It just doesn't make logical sense. You have to stick with the facts.
All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the few conservatives who are attempting to provide cover for Donald Trump, and one of those individuals includes Sean Hannity. Get ready to watch a pretzel get twisted.
All right, guys, check out a couple of things that we do if you don't already. Our podcasting network is fantastic. It even has some shows that are not in video form, so make sure you're checking that on Apple and wherever else you get your podcasts. We do short form videos, whether it's shorts on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram Reels, so check those out whenever you get a chance. And then last one for you guys is the newsletter. So tyt.com/newsletter is called the Progress Report, and it is pretty much the only progressive newsletter in the country, and it's really great. People love reading it. tyt.com/newsletter. All right, now let me go to members. Nebethet writes in, I have Comcast, and the fact that OAN and Newsmax are actual channels on my TV, brainwashing the masses is infuriating. Other than the obvious answer of money, because everything is always about money, what else would have to happen in order for TYT to have a channel on television? How can we help make that happen? P.S. When will someone we've maybe never heard of step up on the progressive candidate? We need someone, anyone. All right, so you're asking two different things there. In terms of the channels on cable, the rules of cable is that you have to do completely different shows only for cable, because they were kings back in the day, and getting on TV was the most important thing in the world. And so they would not allow you to do the same shows online. So we chose online instead of TV. And I think we made the right choice. But unfortunately, mainstream media is filled with people who are mentally 98 years old. So they're like, we only can watch TV. We do not know what online is. What is online, right? So, by the way, proving my case is Tucker's show. You're getting millions and millions of views on Twitter, but not at all covered anymore by the rest of the press because it's not on cable news. And so, yes, it would require a tremendous amount of money to set up a second channel that goes on cable. And so our competitors have like 200 million, 2 billion, 400 million, an enormous amount of money that we don't have anywhere near. So with your guys' help, we do the best we can and try to get it to as many places as possible. And by the way, we are on all the new cable, all the OTTs that are free, 24/7, like Pluto, Roku, Samsung, even Comcast's Xfinity. All you have to do is type in TYT or Young Turks on any of those platforms and you'll get us. Zumo as well. All right, let's keep going. I do declare, says Trump has changed his story about how the president can keep all these documents, but bashes former presidents keeping classified information in Chinatown. If that is his defense, Obama, Bush, and Clinton could keep anything as well, as long as it's not in Chinatown. Okay, yeah, I mean, look, you don't even have to get into Trump. Trump's an idiot. None of his declarations make any sense. Gabby Marita says, all I want for Christmas is Trump testifying at his criminal trial. Is it possible to overdose on popcorn? Gabby, excellent question. I have the same thoughts. And Camp Corona Dad said, ladies and gentlemen, we got him on tape. True. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, Blake Kaveni, LaShawn Lewis, The Gilded History of the US, and Chaotic Insight Dragon. Because those folks just became members and hence are doing the show with us. And Bruce Salazar also gifted a membership, which we really appreciate. Thank you guys. Hit the join button below to join. All right, Anna.
Well, there's a lot more to get into in regard to Trump and the classified documents case against him. So let's talk about it.
This totally wins my case, you know. Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information. But look, since president, I could have declared it. Now I can't.
After CNN decided to publish the leaked audio where Trump incriminated himself in the classified documents case, Trump raged about it. In fact, he raged about it on Truth Social and even talked about it when he was asked to comment on the leaked audio. And he claims, no, totally fine. I'm a legitimate person who has been exonerated by this leak. Let's hear what he had to say.
You're not concerned then with your own voice on those recordings?
My voice was fine. What did I say wrong on those recordings? I didn't even see the recording. All I know is I did nothing wrong. We had a lot of papers stacked up. In fact, you could hear the rustle of the paper, and nobody said I did anything wrong, other than the fake news, which of course is Fox too.
Are there any other recordings that we should be concerned of?
I don't know of any recordings that you should be concerned with, because I don't do things wrong. I do things right. I'm a legitimate person.
You heard it here first, folks. He is a legitimate person. I should also note, though, that the investigation, the 49-page indictment indicates that there are 2 different recordings. The one that CNN published is from July of 2021. The second one, which we haven't heard yet, it has not been published yet, is allegedly from August or September of 2021. So there's that. But in a post on Truth Social, he also alleged to have been exonerated by the leak of this audio. He says the deranged special prosecutor, Jack Smith, working in conjunction with the DOJ and FBI, illegally leaked and spun a tape and transcript of me, which is actually an exoneration rather than what they would have you believe. And he calls it a witch hunt, of course, typical Trump fashion. Cenk, thoughts?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm a legitimate person goes right up there with I'm a very stable genius.
Totally.
If you have to say it, are you sure you are? Okay, but here was my favorite part of that little tape. I haven't seen the tape, I don't know what's in it, but you hear the rustling of the papers. Wait. Okay, so did you hear it or didn't you hear it? Okay, he's not like, guys, he's just not mentally competent to put on a defense. And he's not mentally competent enough to shut his mouth. The #1 witness against Donald Trump is Donald Trump.
Now, Trump, of course, is gonna try to defend himself. And while there are far less conservative voices who are going out of their way to provide cover for Trump's bad behavior and potential criminality, Sean Hannity is not one of those people who's decided to remain quiet. In fact, he twisted himself into a pretzel in an effort to defend Donald Trump, or at least provide plausible deniability for Trump. If you don't know what I'm talking about, here's what I mean.
While he did say, this is stuff that he got from the military that would be highly confidential and secret, and says at another point, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I couldn't, but now, it would still be a secret. That does not confirm for me whether or not specifically this document was declassified or not. Was that actually the real document, or was it a story that he was telling? And my understanding is that that particular document was never found by the special counsel or by, the raid at Mar-a-Lago, but I might be mistaken on that. I don't think I am.
So even while Trump says in the audio recording that he has highly confidential classified documents, which he can no longer declassify because he's no longer in office, Sean Hannity is pretending like he didn't hear what we all heard in that audio. And Brian Kilmeade seems to agree with him as well. Let's listen.
Kind of surprised and was kind of effective when he told Bret Baier, hey, Bret, these were newspaper articles. There were no top secret documents. So he has a pushback on that.
And I just want to provide the reference for you, the portion of the Bret Baier interview where Trump lies about how he was not in possession of any classified documents as that audio was being recorded. Let's watch.
That wasn't a document, Bret. There was no document. That was a massive amount of papers and everything else talking about Iran and other things. And it may have been held up or may not, but that was not a document. I didn't have a document per se. There was nothing to declassify. These were newspaper stories, magazine stories, and articles.
I don't know, maybe Trump is telling the truth. Maybe we need to listen to that leaked audio one more time to decide for ourselves whether Trump is telling the truth or lying.
Look at this. You attack, and
Hillary would print that out all the time,
she'd send it to Anthony Weiner, the pervert. By the way, isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I was just saying, because we were talking about it, and he said he wanted to attack Iran and what? These are the papers. This was done by the military, given to me.
I think we can probably, right?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to figure out
See, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't, but this is classified.
now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's so cool. I mean, it's so. Look, here and I have. And you probably almost didn't believe me, but now you believe me.
No, I believe
it's
you.
incredible, right?
No,
hey, bring some Cokes in, please.
So I just want to reiterate what he says there, Cenk. He even says, this is his exact statement, that the document was done by the military and given to me. So is the military writing newspaper articles and then giving them to you? Like, that makes absolutely no sense. Just going back to what he claimed on Bret Baier's show.
So guys, I said this on the Damage Report this morning too, and you should check that out. Damage Report's a great show on our network. This is the one where he's in actual trouble. So MSNBC is the boy who cried wolf. They've said it 2,000 times and it's never come true. So no one believes it anymore. But now he's in actual trouble. That is, they've got him dead to rights legally. And you could tell it from the desperation of the right-wing pundits. So that Hannity clip. Now, by the way, fairest show in America. It's not technically impossible what Hannity's saying.
Right.
But understand the implication of what Hannity's saying. Hannity's saying he's taking a bunch of papers that are not actually classified documents. And he's telling the people that he's talking to, the biographer, etc., I got these documents that Milley made of our invasion plans of Iran. Okay, here they are. But they're not actually those documents. In other words, Hannity is saying, well, Trump's a well-known liar. So he could have just been lying about what was in the documents that he was waving around. Interesting. Then today, a Newsmax anchor doubles down and goes, you know how Trump is. And what did he say here? I'll give you the exact quote. He said, just because Trump said it, quote, doesn't make it true.
I like how Trump being a liar is what's cited as a possible cover, right? Or defense for Trump. It's amazing. We all know he's a liar, and in this case, that's a really good thing.
Yeah, no, this is their last stand. This is Custer's last stand, right? They're like, okay, we're out of all excuses. What can we do? Because Trump said it with his own mouth, the freaking idiot. What are we gonna do? Oh, I know. Everybody knows Trump's a liar. We'll use the Trump's a liar defense. But he's not lying now. When he's in legal trouble, he was lying earlier to brag or whatever. So, but it ain't gonna work, guys. That kind of stuff does not work in a court of law. So, world of trouble. He's definitely guilty. If he was a normal person, for sure going away for maybe decades, right? So under this situation, as I said earlier in today's show, either a juror or a judge or a politician has to let him off the hook. Otherwise, he might literally go to prison.
I wouldn't hold my breath in regard to Trump ever going to prison. I think it's important to keep our expectations tethered to reality.
Oh, 100%.
And I'm not saying that because I think people who tend to be powerful, who tend to be well connected, shouldn't face the similar consequences that anyone else would face. I actually think that the two-tier justice system we're dealing with here is pretty gross. But the reality is, people who were former politicians, former presidents, usually get away with their crimes.
Yeah, so look, the establishment, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, media, donors, etc., they want Trump out of politics. Let's keep it real. Both things can be true at the same time. They want him out of politics and he's a liar and a criminal, right? So, and they're using the fact that he's a liar and a criminal to get him out of politics. But do they want him to actually go to jail? No. They don't want anybody powerful to actually go to jail because that could set a bad precedent because they're powerful, right? So those are the conflicting interests. That's why we're all skeptical that Donald Trump is ever gonna spend a day in jail. But if the jury convicts him, what are they gonna do? Just be like, no, the law doesn't apply? No, if a jury convicts you, you gotta go to jail.
Community service, restorative justice.
It's possible, the judge could do anything. There's appeals, there's a lot of things. And that's why we're all skeptical that he's gonna go to prison. But this is as guilty as I have ever seen anyone, because even the right wing is this close to admitting he definitely did it.
So there's one other angle that I thought was fascinating, and I wanna reset for it, because Steve Doocy pushed a theory that might have some truth to it, considering how buffoonish Trump tends to be when it comes to these situations. So Now that CNN has published leaked audio featuring Donald Trump incriminating himself and making it clear that he has classified documents, that he could have declassified as president but could no longer declassify since he's no longer in office, some are wondering how that leaked audio went out in the first place. Where did it come from? Who leaked it? And Steve Doocy over at Fox News has a fascinating theory, to say the least. Let's watch.
Trump posted on Truth Social, the deranged special prosecutor Jack Smith, working in conjunction with the DOJ and FBI, illegally leaked and spun a tape and transcript of me, which is actually an exoneration. So you know what? If Trump thinks it's an exoneration of him, perhaps somebody on his side actually did the leaking to CNN and Maggie Haberman. Trump's lawyers actually knew about this tape since March, when one of Trump's aides, a woman by the name of Margot Martin, was asked about it during an appearance before the grand jury, and then the government subpoenaed her copy of the tape. So the tapes are floating around on the Trump side. We don't know, exactly where it came from.
So this might sound outlandish and crazy, except Trump did specify that he feels that leaked audio exonerates him. And honestly, this reminds me of when Trump was being impeached the first time after withholding congressionally appropriated military funding to Ukraine in an effort to engage in a quid pro quo and get Vladimir Zelensky, to announce some sham investigation into Trump's political opponent, Joe Biden. He claimed, there was no quid pro quo. He released the transcript of the phone call he had with Volodymyr Zelensky. He's like, it was the perfect call. So is it far-fetched that Trump would leak this himself, or someone on his team would leak this themselves in an effort to exonerate him? I don't think it's that far-fetched. And remember, after CNN broke this story, he was asked about it by a Fox News reporter, and here's how he reacted to us all hearing what he did and incriminating himself in that audio.
You're not concerned then with your own voice on those recordings?
My voice was fine. What did I say wrong on those recordings? I didn't even see the recording. All I know is I did nothing wrong. We had a lot of papers stacked up. In fact, you could hear the rustle of the paper, and nobody said I did anything wrong, other than the fake news, which of course is Fox too.
Are there any other recordings that we should be concerned of?
I don't know of any recordings that you should be concerned with, because I don't do things wrong. I do things right. I'm a legitimate person.
He's a legitimate person, Jake. Do you think there's a possibility he leaked this himself?
Oh, totally. So I think that's a really good theory by Steve Doocy. Look at that, agreeing with a Fox News host. There's excellent evidence that the source for Maggie Haberman, generally speaking, throughout Trump's administration was Donald J. Trump.
Oh my God, that is
okay.
That is not something that speaks well of Maggie Haberman.
Well, I mean, look, honestly, you take any mainstream media reporter,
I know,
and the president is leaking information to them, they're gonna take it. They're 100% of them will take it and will not tell you that it's Trump, and will then put it in a slightly favorable light to Trump, okay?
But Maggie
That's the deal.
Haberman's reporting was not favorable toward Trump.
No. It's actually, if you read some of the analysis of it, yeah, the stuff is damaging because Trump is leaking damaging things about himself, right?
That's true, yeah.
But she puts it in a light that's slightly favorable, okay? And by the way, if you don't know that, it's not throwing Maggie Haberman under a bus. Almost every reporter in mainstream media does that. So be careful what you read. They give special favors to the people who gave them the quotes and the information and the leaks, and they frame it positive to them, okay? That's a very well-known part of media coverage, which is, by the way, gross. And they never clarify that. All right, anyways, so I'm back to this. Maggie Haberman is one of the people who had this leak, thereby leading you to think maybe it was Trump. And so now, why does he do it? Why does he leak against himself? That's so weird, right? Number one, he believes that there is no such thing as bad press. That as long as you're dominating the media cycle, you're winning. Even at this late date, with all the atrocities and the criminal actions and the insanity, he's leading by 30 points in the Republican primary. So are you sure he's wrong about that? I'm not so sure he's wrong about that. Okay, and so DeSantis isn't in the news, Chris Christie, nobody else is in the news but Trump, because he's leaking his own stuff. Number two, this is actually a well-known strategy, not just for Trump, but in all of politics. You leak something ahead of time to get ahead of the story, right? And you frame it in the way that you want. If someone else leaks it, they frame it in a way against you. If you leak it, you frame it in the most positive way that you can, and your compliant reporter goes along with that, okay? And then there's other possible reasons. He's nuts, and that's why he's giving stuff that's against him, but he thinks it's great. Like one of the things that he thinks exonerates him is, well, we're joking around and it's a friendly conversation. How could I be giving classified information in a friendly conversation?
Come on, man.
But I know, but guys, a lot of people believe the things he says, no matter how absurd. And they'll hear that tape and they'll hear people laughing and snickering and shuffling of the papers, and they'll say, oh, just like he said, there was a shuffling of the papers and everybody's being friendly. Oh, come on, that can't be so bad. So that's what he's doing right now. And the last part of it is, he's never won in court, ever. Trump University, Trump charities, the taxes, he always pays the fine.
The election.
Yeah, the election, 60 court cases, didn't present one piece of evidence. He can't win in court because he's a pathological liar. So he always tries to win in the court of public opinion. And if you leak first and then you attack and you go, perfect call, exoneration, rustling of papers, friendly, and you repeat it 2,000 times maniacally. I'm a legitimate person, I'm a legitimate person, I'm a legitimate person. It works. For at least 30% of this country, that tactic is stunningly effective. So I think Ducey's onto something.
Well, while Trump remains a target-rich environment for anyone who wants to run against him in the Republican presidential primary, Ron DeSantis loves to pull his punches. We have one of the most outrageous examples of that when we come back from the break.
Let's go to your comments, guys. Tony Face 2007 writes in, I think from the UK. Trump has entertained the world at the USA's expense for years. If you watch the Sacha Baron Cohen speech on democracy in his film, The Dictator, tells you everything that the world has known about the US politics for over a decade. Look, between Bush, Cheney, Trump, etc., it's been an embarrassing run for America in the last 20 years. Obama, of course, is a very smart guy, and the world was rejoiced when he was elected. But then he didn't do much, and so that was also a disappointment. But by comparison to the others, he was amazing. Trisha Briggs writes, and I agree with Cenk on TDR this morning. I think he's finally in trouble now, and I'm here for it. Maybe he'll finally feel some consequences. Well, one of the consequences he's feeling, guys, is that he's super nervous. I mean, he's sweating up a storm down in Florida.
I mean, to be fair, everyone's sweating up a storm down in Florida.
That is,
like
that
it's
is also
humid
true.
as hell over there.
100%. But having said that, no, he's a mess, man. In his head, he's so worried. And every time I think about that, I love it. Okay, Gypsy Mama writes, and these are now YouTube members, access journalism. That is exactly what that is. But she did break important stories too. I'm being fair, okay?
She was not fair to you. Like, you're incredible. Anyway, let's keep going.
Well, our job is not to be fair to Maggie Haberman or any politician or to anyone in the press. Our job is to be fair to you. I have to give you the news in an honest way, whether it's for me, against me, whether I have personal feelings or not. I'll say super quick, I'll tell you a real quick story. Wade Boggs, one of the greatest hitters of all time, and the reporters only wrote negative things about him. And Ben once told me why, because it turns out Wade Boggs is a jerk and he treated the reporters terribly, so they would write negative things about him. But that doesn't make any sense. I don't care how he treated you. Was he a great hitter or wasn't he a great hitter? No, the media is so biased that they think it's perfectly normal to let their personal feelings affect their coverage. I don't do that. So yes, some of these people have been terrible to me. That's okay. I'm going to tell it to you exactly as it is, no matter what. All right, MK became a member and then wrote in, Anna, that lipstick is fire.
Thank you.
Love the story of its origin. Would love if you retell how to purchase it.
Oh, for sure. I'll just real quick. It's Lip Lab, and if it's the one from yesterday, just look up Clopey, Clopey with a heart, and it'll pop up.
And that's easy because that's a distinct word, obviously.
Yeah.
Moistmaster became a member and wrote in, the military must preemptively provide reports to the president so he knows his options. This doesn't really prove Milley wanted to invade Iran. Totally agreed, great point. I love how smart that point is. Candy writes in, 45, the most insecure man in the world. That is also enormously true. Schultzy 41 says, I think it was because of his ego, selling them would be secondary. Also possible, we'll be back. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. You know you all could become members by hitting the join button below. You power our honest reporting, which we appreciate. You could also do it at tyt.com/join. Athletes LLC, American Heroes, gifted 20 Young Turks memberships.
Jeez.
And Bruce Salazar gifted 5. You guys are amazing, and thank you for standing up for the rest of the community and providing for them as well. We really appreciate it. All right, what's next, Anna?
Well, Ron DeSantis pulling punches yet again.
Do you believe that Trump violated the peaceful transfer of power?
I wasn't anywhere near Washington that day. I have nothing to do with what happened that day. Obviously, I didn't enjoy seeing, what happened.
Imagine being so terrified of Donald Trump that you pretend as though you need to be in the nation's capital on January 6th to acknowledge that there was a massive pro-Trump riot with an attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Obviously, Ron DeSantis knows what we all know, that there was not a peaceful transfer of power. And how do we know that? Even though we weren't there ourselves in Washington, D.C. at the time. I don't know, maybe because there's a lot of documentation of it, including this.
Multiple capital injuries.
So now that we got that out of the way, let's watch DeSantis' statements in full context.
Do you believe that Trump violated the peaceful transfer of power, a key principle that of American democracy that we must uphold?
Are you in high school?
Yeah.
Where do you go to school? You go around here?
Vermont, but I live in New Hampshire.
Oh, okay, so you're from Vermont. Well, thank you for the question. So here's what I know. If this election is about Biden's failures and our vision for the future, we are gonna win. If it's about relitigating things that happened 2-3 years ago, we're gonna lose. And so I can tell you this, I can point you to Tallahassee, Florida on, I believe, January 5th, 2023. We had a transition of power from my first administration to my second because I won re-election in a historic fashion. And at the end of the day, we need to win and we need to get this done. So I wasn't anywhere near Washington that day. I have nothing to do with what happened that day. Obviously, I didn't enjoy seeing, what happened. But we've got to go forward on this stuff. We cannot be looking backwards and be mired in the past.
Ladies and gentlemen, get that soft churned butter ready because DeSantis is toast. I mean, this guy is so pathetic. Absolutely pathetic.
I'll tell you the core of it. Look, it's easy to focus on I wasn't in Washington because you don't have eyes and you can't tell what happened on that tape, etc. But that's not the main thing. The main thing is he gives political answers that are rehearsed. Like he talks to his consultants behind the scenes about how do we frame this? How do I say it in a way that doesn't upset MAGA, but that still makes our case? All right, we're gonna make our case by saying, although like insurrections are they're a little awkward, little uncomfortable, but like, hey, I'm not blaming you guys. That was wonderful, great job, etc. And
some people say,
but we want to focus on winning. We want to focus on the future. These are buzzwords that your consultants go through with you, right? But what happens at the end of that process is you look like a plastic robot.
100%, and that was and look, in the context of robot politicians being obsessed with framing things in like these, like honestly, snake-like ways, that was clunky as hell.
Yeah, but they're all clunky. That's why, you watch Tim Scott, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, they're all a disaster. They're all Ken and Barbie dolls. And by the way, that's why the Republican voters picked Trump in the first place, all the way back in 2016, because they were tired of the phonies.
Right.
And both parties are filled to the rim with phonies. The Democrats might have even more phonies. And whether you like some of their policies or not, all those politicians on the Democratic side are like, I am giving you the talking points my corporate donors and consultants gave me, right? And people are vomiting it, they hate it, right? So that's why I keep saying, I think the only other guy who has a chance on the Republican side is Chris Christie, because he doesn't sound like a robot. He sounds like a real person, and he's willing to piss off MAGA. So that's a huge detriment in the beginning, but by the end, my theory is he'll earn their respect by not being a phony.
I'm interested to see how that plays out, because Chris Christie right now seems to be dead last in the polling, right? And he's continuing to attack Trump very aggressively. He does not pull back any punches. And so if things continue the way they're going and Christie remains dead last, it will reinforce the notion that these Republican candidates challenging Trump should avoid attacking Trump and upsetting the MAGA base. But we'll see how it all plays out. I'm really curious to see if you're correct.
Yeah, look, I honestly have a pretty good track record on this. When Bill de Blasio was in 4th place when he was first running for mayor of New York, I said I think he's gonna win. Because it's about, and I thought Trump was gonna win in 2016. I thought Bernie was gonna make a historic run. Why? Because it isn't about where you are in the polling today. It's about the fundamentals. Are you doing things right or are you doing things wrong? And so when everybody was saying Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush was gonna win in 2016, I sensed that the Republicans were even more populist than the Democrats were, the voters themselves, right? So when Marco Rubio comes in like this, they're like, no interest, no interest. That's why everyone on TV loved him, because they love phonies, because they're phonies, and that's why all the voters hated him. And so that bottom line is, when they see Ron DeSantis doing this, it's not gonna work, man. And remember, Trump might actually get knocked out by the indictments. I mean, these trials are gonna be no joke, right? And if he gets knocked out, then Christie's gonna make a huge run on DeSantis.
I have a feeling DeSantis is just trying to keep his powder dry and avoid upsetting the MAGA base, with the hope that Trump does end up getting convicted in the classified documents
No, that's not a hope and it's not a possibility. That's definitely a strategy, okay? But how long are you gonna keep your powder dry?
Listen, we've done that drug, DeSantis, okay? We've been on that drug, and I will tell you, it is not a good drug to be on. You will be disappointed if you have full faith in our justice system when it comes to prosecuting potential criminals like Donald Trump.
Well, that's point number one. And point number two is the Democratic Party's slogan might as well be, keep our powder dry. And how's that worked out for us? We lose to buffoons like Trump, because all you do is you always keep your powder dry. Well, then nobody ever finds out your own position, and you never make a strong case for yourself, and the other side wins.
And let me just remind you all that while DeSantis seems to shiver anytime anyone asks him about Donald Trump because he wants to avoid attacking him. Trump does not pull back punches himself. I just want to give you one of my favorite examples, which was Trump attacking DeSantis over his eating habits. Let's watch.
Ron DeSantis loves sticking his fingers where they don't belong. And we're not just talking about pudding. DeSantis has his dirty fingers all over senior entitlements, like cutting Medicare, slashing Social Security, even raising our retirement age. Tell Ron DeSantis to keep his pudding fingers off our money. Oh, and somebody get this man a spoon.
Make America Great Again, Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
That is a perfect political ad. Look, as much as I dislike Donald Trump, that ad attacking Ron DeSantis was perfect because it evokes disgust with that guy putting his, it makes me nauseous just watch it. Please stop doing it. And then on top of that, there's the substantive point and economic populist point in regard to DeSantis wanting to gut Social Security.
Yeah.
So it was well done. I'm just gonna keep it real with you all. That was a great ad.
And by the way, so disgust is the #1 thing that triggers conservative mind, even more so than fear. So that whoever's doing that ad for Trump hit it exactly right. #2, it shows strength. I'm gonna punch you in the mouth and see how you like it. And Democratic voters, a lot of them don't like that. They're like, no, NPR says don't punch your opponents, make sweet love to them, right? But Republicans love punching their opponents in the face, so they're gonna like that. And then the last part of it is, look guys, if you're listening to someone in mainstream media, they have a 90% chance of being wrong. Because people in mainstream media look at that and go, that is not a professional ad. That tisk, that's uncivil, it's weird. Why do they have that imagery? It doesn't talk about any of the substantive issues that the New York Times is talking about, etc. No, they have no connection to actual human beings. Because people in corporate media haven't hung out with a regular person in decades. So they just cannot sense where the population is. So in terms of just sheer politics, Trump is way, way, way better than DeSantis. Trump's problem is that he's a lifelong criminal, a complete con man, and a pathological liar. So those are like the fact that he has overcome those to already be president once and is leading by 20 to 30 points currently in the Republican primary shows you how good a politician he is.
Yeah, it's pretty devastating. We got to take a break, but when we come back for the second hour of the show, we actually have some good news coming out of the Supreme Court of the United States. We'll tell you what it is. Stick around, we'll be right back.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was too strong coffee? Yes, new, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at toostrongcoffee.com/TYT.
That's 300 million, that's a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts?
Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 25 billion lifetime views.
Damn.
All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Billy B. Taylor. What do you know? Billy says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Jenkins Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out
Okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the voice.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable. Senator Sanders, welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted. Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Liz Ciccio, and Sean Murphy. They're the folks who made a difference by joining our team and helping to get honest reporting out there. We appreciate it. They hit the join button below the video on YouTube. You guys can do likewise, or you can go to tyt.com/join. All right, Anna.
The Supreme Court of the United States has fortunately decided to protect America's system of checks and balances in a case involving Trump-backed election law theory. Now, the situation or the case itself centered on electoral maps in the state of North Carolina. Republican lawmakers in North Carolina were asking the justices to adopt a long dormant legal theory and hold that states' courts and other state entities have a limited role in reviewing election rules established by state legislatures when it comes to federal elections. So let's pause for a second and kind of understand what that means. Republican lawmakers in the state of North Carolina did not want the courts to intervene if they were engaging in electoral behavior, drawing electoral maps, doing things that would be deemed unconstitutional, right? They wanted to do away with the system of checks and balances as it pertains to elections in the state of North Carolina. Well, North Carolina Supreme Court actually struck down the state's 2022 congressional map, citing it an illegal partisan gerrymander that overwhelmingly favored the Republican Party. The state's highest court then replaced that map with another map, congressional map that favored Democrats. Republican lawmakers were furious about it, and so they decided to challenge this all the way to the Supreme Court. And so the Supreme Court heard the case And here's what we know, okay? They relied upon the elections clause of the Constitution that provides that rules governing the manner of holding elections for senators and representatives must be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. Under the independent state legislature theory, the lawmakers argued, the Republican lawmakers, state legislature should be able to set rules with little to no interference from the state courts. But after the case was argued to the Supreme Court, there was a little bit of a mix-up, okay? So what ended up happening was the state Supreme Court was then replaced by conservative justices who decided to overturn the previous state's Supreme Court ruling. And luckily, since the United States Supreme Court had already heard oral arguments in this case, they decided, regardless of what the current state's Supreme Court has ruled, we are going to decide that what the Republican lawmakers are asking for here is unconstitutional. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the majority opinion here, and I'm gonna give you their reasoning for their opinion in just a moment, but Cenk, I want you to jump in.
Yeah, guys, this is a giant case. This is like a mini Marbury versus Madison. So if you know any legal history, that was the most important case in Supreme Court history, and there's a little bit of that here. So it's super important on two grounds. Number one, if they had voted the other way, it could have quite literally ended our democracy.
Absolutely.
So number one, it would give the state legislatures the power to gerrymander to oblivion. So they could, they have already gerrymandered like crazy. They already have those dragon districts, etc., these absurdly shaped districts. But in this case, if there's no checks at all from the courts, they could just draw up any map they like. It doesn't matter how absurd it is. They could just 100% pick their own voters. That's point one. Point two, they could end all ballot measures questioning any part of elections. So the people themselves, even if they got frustrated at what the legislature is doing, could not overrule them. Not only could the ballot measures on gerrymandering not be able to pass, but what if there was a ballot measure saying that the politicians can't take bribes? Sorry, can't do it. It's related to elections. Only the state legislature can be involved there. But most importantly, this arose because of the fake elector scheme. So the Republicans had a plan that, hey, it doesn't matter that Trump lost. Instead of having the electors, the real electors, go to the Electoral College, we'll have state legislatures, which are Republican, even in some blue states, and certainly in some swing states, we'll have them say, no, those electors are not going, Trump's electors are going. Well, the courts couldn't review it if they won in this case. And so they could literally wipe away our votes and just say, no, we don't care how you voted. We're gonna pick the Republican as president no matter what. So this was a monumental case. Now I'm gonna explain the Marbury v. Madison angle and how the courts protected themselves here. And we're gonna talk about how some of the conservative Supreme Court justices did the right thing. And that's like seriously shocking. But let's give you more details first.
So first, let's show you how the justices ruled in this case. As I mentioned, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the 6-3 majority opinion. The dissenting justices included Thomas, Gorsuch, and Alito. And in his writing, Chief Justice John Roberts says that the state courts retain the authority to apply state constitutional restraints when legislatures act under the power conferred upon them by the Elections Clause. He also writes that when state legislatures act pursuant to their Elections Clause authority, they engage in lawmaking subject to the typical constraints on the exercise of such power. In sum, our precedents have long rejected the view that legislative actions under the Elections Clause is purely federal in character, governed only by restraints found in the federal Constitution. Further, the ruling noted that the court allowed that federal courts can have some role in supervising state courts in certain circumstances, with Roberts writing that state courts do not have free reign. Federal courts, Roberts said, must not abandon their duty to exercise judicial review. Cenk.
So that's what gets to basically the deal that Roberts is making here. So in Marbury v. Madison, basically the court decided to exchange their political advantage based on the political composition of the court at the time, for the ability to say the Supreme Court is the ultimate arbiter of what is constitutional. And that's why it's the most important Supreme Court case. And then the politicians accepted that because it was to their advantage. In this case, they're doing something similar here. Most of the justices are Republican, and this would massively help Republicans. It would allow them to cheat on a grand scale. They're trading that in for more power for the courts, because now they're establishing this ruling. No, you cannot circumvent state courts. State courts decide what is constitutional and not constitutional in that state, and you cannot circumvent federal courts. Federal courts can still override the state courts and the state legislature. So they are accruing more power for themselves, but I think they are correct. I think they're correct legally, but don't get it twisted as to why they're doing it. But I'll take this victory any way that I can get it. And even so, I agree with their legal principles anyway, so it's a double win. So, and look, give credit where credit is due. Judge Roberts doing the right thing here, and it's a statesman-like ruling and exchange. Amy Coney Barrett doing the right thing. Brett Kavanaugh doing the right thing. But it also gives you a sense of how radical this proposal was. It was really like, and this is the cherry on top. So Alito and Gorsuch write an opinion. Thomas. Thomas writes the opinion, Gorsuch joins it, where they say, look, this case shouldn't even be decided. The lower courts reversed the ruling anyway. This case was already over. That's a normal legal argument, right? But they add on top, but we would have ruled the other way. Alito does not join that part of the opinion. Alito is maximum radical. He is as radical as Clarence Thomas, if not more so. And even he was like, I don't know that I would have ruled the other way. Like this kind of ends democracy. We can't do this. So we dodged an enormous bullet there, guys. So this is the most important news story of the day, even with the Trump audio tape and all of that out there. This is gigantic.
Does this give you a little bit of peace of mind when it comes to the future of our democratic process?
No, I'm not joking or exaggerating 1% when I say it gave me huge peace of mind. There was a couple of hurdles that we had to get past. One hurdle was this, because if you have this, at any moment in the future, they could steal any election, right? And it's not like they haven't shown a proclivity to do that. They tried to do it in the last election, and spectacularly so, right? The second bullet is Trump himself. Trump / Tucker Carlson, anyone who's willing to say, I don't care, I'm staying even if I lose, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think DeSantis would do that. I know others disagree. I don't think any of the other Republicans would do that. I hate their policies, but I don't think that they're crazy enough and demagogic enough to say, no, I'm ripping up the Constitution. It's basically a coup and there's no more democracy. Trump would definitely do that. He already tried to do that. And there's a couple of others like Bannon, et cetera, that are in that category, but not that many. So once we get past Trump, that's the second hurdle. Then the corporate guys, whether it's DeSantis on the right or Biden on the left, we'll beat those guys. That's just a matter of demographics. Young voters will come in and we'll win. Because we clear those two obstacles in this election, and even though it looks like we're in a bad spot, no, we're actually almost home free after that.
Well, speaking of elections, what I always really enjoy is the endless theater and performances that are put on by candidates and people seeking re-election. So let's get to the next story.
Using federal law in section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act, I will order my government to deny entry to all communists and all Marxists. Those who come to and join our country must love our country. We want them to love our country. We don't want them when they want to destroy our country. Welcome to America. We want to destroy your country. Thank you very much. So we're going to keep foreign Christian-hating communists, Marxists, and socialists out of America.
Trump claimed that should he get reelected as president of the United States, one of the first orders of business would be to ban the immigration of Marxists and communists into the United States. And he specifically mentioned section 212F, 212, what do you say, 212F?
He says everything in a comical way.
Anyway, so he's referring to the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 212F, and I looked that up to make sure that it states what he claims it's stating.
Yeah, because you never know.
You never know, of course, and unfortunately it does. I'm just interested to see how he would enforce this exactly, but it writes that the provision authorizes the president to suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens whose entry he finds would be detrimental to the interests of the United States. The provision has been in the INA since the INA's original enactment in 1952, and the INA, of course, is the Immigration and Nationality Act.
Yeah, so first question, of course, is which wave of communists did I miss? Was there like a giant influx of Marxists in the country and we just didn't hear about it?
Oh, totally. I mean, everyone should be all the capitalists should be concerned. They are being overpowered by the Marxists and communists in the country.
Yeah, and the ones that are coming in from abroad. That's specifically the only people that could begin to fit that description are Cubans that go to Florida. They're not communists, they're escaping communism, right? But they're at least a wave from a communist country, right? But other than that, I've never heard of a wave of communists washing ashore in America or any place. I mean, so what's he gonna, so what does that mean? Does it mean he's gonna ban some rando Marxist professor from entering?
Listen,
like, this is absurd.
This is what this means, okay? It's a performance. So congratulations, Trump. Another wonderful performance from Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
It's theater. There's no real action behind it. There's no real proposal behind it. It's signaling to his supporters and Republican voters that this is what he stands for. This is the performative nonsense he wants to engage in to send a message.
Yeah, and so, but there's two other layers to it. And so this is important, guys. Number one, Republicans set traps for the left and hope that they fall into them. So the flag burning was the classic one, right? So when we say, well, yeah, well, technically burning a flag is protected by the First Amendment, they go, aha, they like burning flags, right? And that works spectacularly. Even though you're thinking logically that shouldn't work, it does. Because all that anybody hears is Democrats like burning flags, okay? In this case, he's saying, we're gonna ban the Marxists and communists. And you go, well, what are you gonna, like I said, you're gonna ban a random professor? That's not right, right? And then they go, aha, the Democrats are protecting Marxists and communists because they like them so much. That's the trick that's being played here. And then he sprinkles in a second one about how much he loves America, and you shouldn't underestimate that one. Democrats make a giant mistake when they don't talk about, when they say that they don't love America or they don't go along with that type of stuff. A lot of Americans, including ones in the middle, they don't like any talk of not liking America. And so
I'm still mad at those LARPers over in Poland.
That's true. I mean, biggest American defender over here.
Coping over it.
Yeah, and so guys, it sounds unsophisticated and dumb, but there's actually some decent political strategy buried underneath that.
Now, the theater continues, not necessarily with Donald Trump, but a Florida senator named Rick Scott, a man who is notorious for engaging in Medicare fraud, which led to the largest settlement by a company engaged in Medicare fraud in American history. But nonetheless, he put out this super awkward video where he essentially says the same thing Trump said.
Let me give you a travel warning. If you're a socialist, communist, somebody that believes in big government, I would think twice. Think twice if you're thinking about taking a vacation or moving to Florida. We're the free state of Florida. We actually don't believe in socialism. We actually know people, and some people in our state lived under it, and we know people lived under socialism. It's not good. It's not good for anybody. So if you're thinking about it, if you think about coming to Florida and you're a socialist or communist, think twice. We like freedom, liberty, capitalism, things like that.
Things like that. I'm wondering how many takes he had before he settled on that one. And that video not the greatest delivery. And I should note that he's facing re-election in 2024. As I mentioned earlier, Rick Scott is a United States Senator from the state of Florida, where there is a sizable population of anti-communist Cubans there, Venezuelans as well. And so he's just signaling to them, he's just messaging to them in an effort to get re-elected. That's what this is really about. The idea that Florida would issue a travel advisory banning socialists, communists, Marxists from traveling to their state is insane. But more importantly, the other thing I want to just quickly mention is, people get mad at me when I both sides these types of situations, but I'm gonna both sides it. Because while Rick Scott is engaging in a political stunt and theater in lieu of actual governing and legislation, you get the same thing on the other end of the political spectrum, on the other side of the aisle, because just a few months ago, you had Democrats issuing travel advisories telling people don't travel to Florida because it's super dangerous. So The Hill reported on it at the time. Scott's statement is a mocking response to recent travel issued by social justice groups declaring Florida an unsafe state for certain minority groups. The NAACP issued a travel advisory warning that Florida has become hostile to Black Americans under Governor Ron DeSantis. The League of United Latin American Citizens, a civil rights organization, and Equality Florida, an LGBTQ rights group, also issued travel warnings. The League of United Latin American Citizens engaging in this when South Florida is one of the most diverse parts of the country when it comes to various Latin American cultures being represented. Like, guys, isn't there real work to do?
Yeah, so look, I agree with you, Anna, with a little bit of an exception, which is the LGBTQ groups. I get it.
I agree.
I mean, they've passed specific laws against that group in Florida. And if you're a little concerned about traveling to Florida because of how disgusting their politicians are and the laws that they've passed, I get that.
Okay, but the other thing I want to just mention, I was just in Florida, right? I was in Key West. Duval Street is like, there are gay flags everywhere.
Yep.
Okay, there's debauchery and fun and pride everywhere. So like, look, are there certain parts of Florida where gay people, members of the LGBTQ community might feel a little bit of hostility? I'm sure. But to say that all of Florida is super dangerous, don't go to Florida, it's dangerous. It's a little crazy.
Yeah, so my point is, if you feel uncomfortable, right? Like let's say that, not let's say, why Oklahoma passed a law saying banning Sharia law. Now, what does that mean? That just means we're hostile to Muslims. And so I was a little concerned because I had a nephew who lived in Oklahoma. And so I was like, dude, don't let people know you're Muslim because they kind of don't like you there, right? So I get all that. But I love the NAACP and their leaders have been on the show many, many times. But it was a little, I think this was a publicity stunt and not a great one. Okay, so I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the Latino group that did it. We can all have disagreements about it. So Rick Scott is partly striking back and partly doing the trick that I talked about earlier with Trump. We're gonna try to get Democrats to associate themselves with communists and socialists, etc. Right? Now, having said all that, it is really dumb. Like I'm gonna go to Florida in about a month. So now I'm a capitalist, but I like Democratic Socialists. I like Bernie Sanders. Is Bernie Sanders not allowed to go to Florida anymore? He's saying that this is formal. He said, formally, you are not to come.
What are they gonna do?
I don't even know what that means.
They're gonna place him under arrest?
Yeah, and he also included people who like big government. Well, I mean, I don't like big government that invades Iraq and that.
Are you kidding me?
Gets between you and your doctor, but there are parts of big government that I like. Am I not allowed in Florida?
No, hold on. How many state lawmakers are for big government? To the point where they're getting involved in like every little bit of curriculum in schools, where they're like engaging in legislation that would basically dictate whether or not parents can provide gender affirming care. They just passed an abortion ban past 6 weeks. Come on, you guys love big government. By the way, both sides love big government for different reasons. So everyone shut up and stop pretending like you don't.
Yeah, every Republican politician in Florida loves big government. Well, I'm not gonna let that woman make the decision for her. The jackbooted thugs of the government should make that personal decision for her. So spare me. Okay, last thing, look at the contrast between Scott and Trump. Like, Rick Scott is so awkward. He's such a bad politician. Whereas Trump's like, 2 and 2, everything he says is funny, right? Yeah. And whether you like him or not, whether you're entertained by him or not, is not relevant.
Look at his face.
Whether his voters are entertained and like him is what's relevant, right? Yeah, that's a showman right there, for better and for worse, right? Rick Scott's like, you get away, commies. You bad.
We like capitalism and stuff like that.
Okay, and every time I see Rick Scott, I get disgusted with the Democratic Party. Why? They lost to that guy 3 times, even though he is one of the biggest criminals in American history. In American history. And he sucks at politics, and the Democrats are like, how would we beat him? I don't know. God, such a pathetic party.
Super pathetic. All right, we got to take another break. When we come back, we've got more news for you, including, maybe we talk about the Death Star bill.
We do. The Death Star, unfortunately, is not only landed in Texas, but it has now also moved to Florida.
It's very bad, not good. Come right back.
All right, let's go to YouTube Super Chat. Dami Mommy Matrix says, shout out to Cenk and Anna and everyone at TYT. You all have been my #1 online outlet for news. I feel informed and entertained. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate both of those things. ACGC writes in, just wait. Trump will eventually claim he's a hologram on his invisible stealth jet, and we're all watching AI. That's the next step for a legitimate person like Trump. I actually don't think that you're even exaggerating. I get you are, and it's parody, etc. But will they use the AI excuse at some point for Trump's tapes? I got it at 50-50. Okay. All right, let's go to YouTube members. Box writes in, look, I'm a full-blown capitalist. This is insane, even if he said this. LOL, it cannot be enforced. Obviously, it can't be enforced. When you land in Florida, they're gonna be like, you a Marxist? You like big government? We're doing checks here, okay? Because then you're gonna have to go back. Obviously, it's as Anna said, it's theater. Modern Relic says the minimum wage should be increased from $7.25 to $7.65 gradually over the next 5 years. Democrats, and that's the problem with Democrats. It's true. I mean, the minimum wage is $7.25. That's insanity. Insanity. And the Democrats' answer for that is, well, I don't care. I mean, yeah. I mean, over the next 20 years, maybe we'll increase it by 20 cents or something. Yay, we're the working people party. Are you? I want you to be, and you can be, but you ain't it right now. David G says, wow, thank you so much for the gift membership. So excited, look at that. The gift membership's already paying off. Michael Gonzalez says, fun show today, thank you. Gary Cooper says, keeping your powder dry only works if you eventually shoot something. The Democrats still haven't figured out what the target is. They're like, semiconductors. Let's help semiconductor companies.
I hate when you use that example because the semiconductor thing was actually good.
No.
Like,
I want you guys to understand, the infrastructure bill was also good. These bills are fine, okay? And there's upsides and downsides to the Inflation Reduction Act. But they're passed so that the donors are happy. And coincidentally, you also get something a little bit not so bad. For example, in the infrastructure bill, they're about to spend $42 billion giving high-speed Wi-Fi to every American. That's actually a wonderful thing, right? But the donors have to get paid first. And that's really the actual point. And then you guys getting helped maybe is a coincidence. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Although that intro made it sound like White Lotus a little bit. Jenny Turville is also with us, new member. All of you guys make a difference. We appreciate it. Lisa Adams as well. And she wrote in, I was really grateful to find this channel. I appreciate all the humor and truth. That's very kind of you, Lisa. We appreciate it. Casper, what's the news?
All right, well, this story is terrifying, and it appears that Florida is trying to copy Texas. So let's talk a little bit about that. The Florida state legislature has just passed a bill that would make it much harder for counties and municipalities to regulate businesses. Once Governor Ron DeSantis signs it, it becomes law in the Sunshine State. So let's discuss what this legislation is and how disastrous it'll be for counties that seek to regulate businesses within their jurisdiction. So here's what you need to know about the Florida bill, okay? The bill allows corporations to sue cities or counties if they find or believe that a local ordinance is arbitrary or unreasonable. For example, let's say that the city of Miami passed some regulation that corporations didn't like. The corporations would be able to sue Miami within 90 days of the regulations being passed. Once the corporation sues, the regulations would be paused. Okay, there would be a halt on those regulations until the court rules in favor or against the city of Miami. If the court rules against Miami, the city's taxpayers would be forced to pay for the corporation's attorney's fees. Corporations would not be required to cover Miami's legal fees if they lose. So there's that double standard there, which is pretty gross and disgusting, which puts taxpayers on the line when it comes to this litigation. But even if the court does rule in the city's favor, or in regard to those regulations, the fact that those regulations have to be stopped, put to a halt as the litigation takes place, provides this massive loophole for these companies. And during that time, a different corporation could sue Miami over the same regulations, and the whole process would start over again, right? So you could have these constant, persistent lawsuits in regard to the regulations that these companies do not like. And as long as those lawsuits are ongoing, those regulations are never implemented. And that is what the state legislature in Florida has voted on. It is what they have passed, both in the state house and state senate. And now, as long as Governor Ron DeSantis signs it into law, it will become law. And it appears that this was modeled after the so-called Death Star bill in the state of Texas, which Texas Governor Greg Abbott also signed into law.
Yeah, so the Republicans pretend to be populist, and it's easy to paint Democratic leadership as elitist because they look and
they
act
are
like they're elitists, right? So the Democrats don't do themselves any favors. But don't get it twisted about the Republicans. This is who they actually are. Don't worry about what they say, look at what they do. So both in Texas and Florida, the Republicans are saying, we want to live under 100% corporate rule. And we don't want cities and local jurisdictions to be able to protect their citizens. I mean, that is 100% literal. So they're saying if you want to protect your citizens in Orlando or in San Antonio, because you want to give them worker protections to be able to take a water break, for example, just simple things like that. Or you want to be able to do different things that like give higher minimum wage in your city, because sometimes the cities are not like the rural areas. They're a little bit bigger, it's a different context, people need more money, they're more expensive to live in. They're like, you're not allowed to do any of that because it could affect our beloved corporations. So we're gonna sue the hell out of you if you go in this direction. In fact, we're just taking your ability to do those laws away. Now, these are from the same Republicans who claimed that they were for local rule my entire life. It is so important that you get down to the community level, and we don't want the federal government, we don't want big government, we want local rule. Now they're like, oh, local rule is upsetting our corporate overlords. So local rule will be eliminated, and a core so-called conservative principle will be put in a dumpster and lit on fire, and you will all be subject to the most draconian rules we could possibly pass at the state level, which are completely controlled by Republicans, 100% owned by their corporate donors. Do not ever be deceived by Republicans. As the party stands right now, it is not anywhere near populist. It is the most sickeningly corporate party I have ever seen.
I mean, they continue to aid and abet the interests of corporations and their donors, and I think this is pretty clear. I want to give you a specific example so you can kind of conceptualize the kind of impact that this will have. So if you guys can recall, a few years ago, there was that tragic condo collapse in Miami. And it was due to the way that building was poorly built. It was due to laxed building code regulations. And so if the city decides they want to bolster their building codes and they want to ensure that developers are following stricter standards when it comes to building new developments, well, if the developers decide that they don't like those regulations, if they have determined that those regulations just happen to be far too costly and go against their best interests, they could file lawsuits and engage in this litigation endlessly to ensure that those regulations are never implemented. So there are real consequences here when it comes to safety. There are real consequences here when it comes to workers' rights, when it comes to the way that they're treated in the workplace. I mean, the possibilities are endless here. And I didn't even give you all the details yet. There's more in this legislation. For instance, local governments would be required to draft a business impact statement every time they're considering a new ordinance. So, there are these environmental impact statements or studies to ensure that a new project isn't gonna destroy the environment. But in this case, they're turning it on its face, and it's like, no. These cities need to provide a business impact statement. The impact statement would have to explain the economic impact of the ordinance on for-profit businesses, how many businesses the ordinance would affect, and the enforcement cost of the ordinance. Also, the Florida state legislature just sent this bill to Ron DeSantis. He's very, very likely to sign it. And I want to give you a few more implications of this horrifying legislation. For instance, one person says that what you're saying is anyone can file their lawsuit even if they have deep pockets and it's for the wrong reasons. And all of my residents in my community have to pay those fees under your new statute. Is that correct? Representative Robin Bartleman, a Weston Democrat, asked the sponsor of the bill on Thursday during a lengthy debate in the House State Affairs Committee meeting. And the response by Representative Bobby Brackett, a Republican, is this: that is correct. That is correct.
Wow, he just says it.
Yep.
So if you were going to be a rare politician looking to protect your voters, you're just not even allowed to do it anymore in Texas or Florida. To give you an example from Texas, some of those cities had passed a rule saying that if there's extreme heat, you have to give a 10-minute water break every once in a while to people working in the heat. That's now going to be wiped off the books. You don't get water breaks anymore. It goes into effect September 1st, but to give you a sense of the effects that it can have, 2 people already died this week because of heat exhaustion in Texas while they were working outside. So that's a real thing. It actually kills people, and now you won't be able to regulate against it. And the Florida bill is arguably worse because not only does it just get rid of all the laws that you pass that would help your citizens, but on top of that, it says don't even think about it because if you do, we're going to sue you and cost us. You're going to lose, and it's going to cost the city so much money you'll never be able to get out from underneath it.
Right.
So, and I read an article where they made a really good point. They said, look, it's already hard enough to get local legislators to do anything economically progressive. Now you put this on top, and it makes it flat out impossible. So the citizens cannot be protected. Corporate rule complete.
All right, listen, it's been a heavy show, but when we come back from the break, we're gonna give you some good news. Buffets are back, baby.
Yes.
Don't miss it. We'll see you in a few.
All right, let's go to members on our website. Tomato writes in, as happy as I am to see the A-Team back together, I'm also strongly in favor of relaxing holidays for Anna and Cenk. De-stressing must be an important part of this job. Okay, well, thank you. That's very thoughtful of you. We appreciate it. Our members are awesome. Dragon with a Girl Tattoo says, it wasn't a document. It was just some papers prepared for me by the US military outlining how we'd attack Iran if you gave us that order, but definitely not documents. Well, that's such a great point because what else would they be? Like that's just a very specific thing, and it's called a document. I love how smart our audience is. All right, the Throat Goat Dragon says, I love how conservative media will all make excuses for Trump. Then new information will come out directly contradicting their excuses, and they'll just immediately move on to a new excuse. Happens every single time. You see, sometimes, very rarely, we'll make a mistake and we'll come back on here and we'll say, oh guys, that was a mistake and here's the actual thing. Have you ever seen conservative media do that? Have you ever seen Fox News go, oh my God, we told you that Trump hadn't done this, but it turns out, my God, it turns out he did sleep with Stormy Daniels and it turns out he did pay her hush money. Ever in history? Okay, I don't remember it. That's how you know they're not honest. And they don't actually care about the truth or the news. Catherine writes in, obviously none of us would vote for Christie, but it's a blast to watch him slashing at Trump over and over. I like that he's willing to stand there being booed and he doesn't equivocate. Yeah, he's a jerk, but I like the knife fight. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had a Democrat who also fought back against Republicans instead of having to rely on a Republican to do it? I know, crazy idea. Mainstream media says that would be terrible. Terrible if a Democrat aggressively fought back against Republicans. It would be uncivil. So we should probably listen to that idiotic advice. Shauna says, I truly don't know how I would remain sane without TYT family. Thank you so much, TYT, you all rock. You too, Shauna, thank you for being with us. Moni Renee Canuck writes in, so glad I became a member, been following you since the mid-2000s. Regarding SCOTUS, they've been ruling more favorably because they've been under scrutiny lately, in my opinion, PR. If it is PR, I'll take it. And if it's a scrutiny, then I love that we scrutinize them. We're not positive why they ruled that way. I think it's probably more to preserve court power, but either way, it's awesome. Thank you for writing in, you're awesome. Atomica Ann says, Anna's toilet dress is so lovely today.
This one's from the 60s, thank you. And I do love the blue and white. I have a lot of that like pottery at home, it's pretty, so.
Yep. God bless. The Throat Goat Dragon also writes in states' rights, except for the blue states. Local control, except for the blue localities. So just want Republicans to run everything. Yes, Republicans don't care about democracy and principles and all those lovely things. No, they care about power, and that's the only thing they care about. Power on Reset on Twitch writes in insanity defense. That's the very last defense for Trump, and it's not impossible. All right, back on TYT, Jen and Anna with you guys.
We have breaking news.
Uh-oh, what is it?
Okay, so breaking news. No, we got to hold off on buffets. We'll get to that in just a moment.
That's not the breaking news.
Breaking news, buffets are back, baby. This is Wolf Blitzer, everything's breaking news. All right, anyway, so Trump has now reversed course on his excuses and his cover story in regard to the leaked audio that features him incriminating himself while showing classified documents pertaining to foreign policy in regard to Iran during a meeting back in 2021. Now, previously, he's like, I didn't have any classified documents. I was showing them newspaper articles, even though in the recording you can hear him say, this is top secret, this is classified. I could have declassified it as president, can't declassify it now. Well, now he says something completely different. According to a Mediaite headline, Trump reverses course, now claims he wasn't actually showing Iran battle plans on infamous recording. It was just bravado.
Yeah, see, I knew it. I said it earlier in today's show. I said they're going to Trump's well-known liar defense. Hannity did it, Newsmax anchor did it, now Trump himself is doing it. Well, you know, I waved the documents around. I say there were documents to invade Iran, but remember, I'm a well-known liar.
Yeah.
So I was just lying to them. They weren't actually those documents. It was bravado.
So some more details. Now Trump is trying a new strategy by claiming that he was lying.
Told you.
On the recording, and here's what he said, quote, I would say it was bravado. If you want to know the truth, it was bravado, Trump told Seaford and ABC News on board his plane on Tuesday. He also said, I was talking and just holding up papers and talking about them, but I had no documents. I didn't have any documents. Listen, this issue can be investigated very easily. He had 2 of his staffers there, and he also had the individual writing his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows' memoir there. So investigators, prosecutors should question them and ask exactly what they saw and what the document looked like.
Besides which, I'm not entertaining it. He never said that they weren't the actual documents before. He's only saying it because he's now caught in a corner. A hashtag Cenk was right, literally said it earlier in the show. And in fact, I read a comment from one of the members just a second ago during the break. And look, guys, they get, as Trump is more and more clearly guilty, they go to like more and more absurd defenses, but they're going to absurd defenses because they're believable. Why are they believable? Because everybody knows Trump's a liar. So that's why Hannity was like, well, you don't know that he wasn't lying back then. But by the way, if that's true, Hannity and Trump, how do we know you're not lying now?
But you know what? On the other hand, have you considered that people who change their stories within one day tend to be telling the truth? Have you considered that?
Not in my experience, but hey, if in your experience that's the case, go for it. And I mentioned the member comment because they were like, insanity defense?
Maybe.
At the very end, if he's really cornered, that will be the last thing that they try. Hear me now, quote me later. They even teased it a couple of times during the impeachment, but then they realized, oh my God, these Democrats are so weak, they're not even gonna come close to actually getting us kicked out of office. Roger Stone hinted at it. So, and again, the reason you'd go to that is because it's a little believable.
I mean,
because he is a little nuts, right?
Trump stated he was simply holding up random papers. Quote, I just held up a whole pile of, my desk is loaded up with papers. I have papers from 25 different things, he said. A reporter asked the former president if he regretted how he handled classified documents upon leaving the White House. He responded by saying, no, I have no regrets. I didn't have a classified document. There was no classified document on my desk.
Okay, but listen guys, when you try, that's fine. And it doesn't matter. They need to give MAGA the thinnest little read. Even the thinnest. If they tell MAGA, oh, come on, guys, you can't believe Trump. Trump's a dumbass liar. That's why he was lying to the people that came to his office. They're like, good enough, not guilty, not guilty. But in this case, MAGA is not the relevant thing.
Right.
The court is,
yes.
right? And when you go into court and you say, well, I was lying back then, the jury goes, so you just admitted you're a liar. Okay, that's not gonna play well. It just isn't.
Okay, my favorite part. So apparently a reporter then asked if, since these recordings exist and it incriminates Donald Trump, is he considering a plea deal? And here's how he responded to that. Frankly, that you even ask a question like that, that's a disgrace. He called it's a disgrace. How dare you?
He'd take a plea deal so quick. Okay.
So let's end it. He finishes the sentence. Anyway.
So he's not gonna get a good plea deal, so that's why he's not considering it. But if he wasn't running for president and he'd done this and he thought he was gonna go to prison and they gave him a plea deal not to go to prison, he'd be like, deal.
Yeah.
How do I know that? He's done that so many times throughout his life already, right?
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about buffets.
Breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news, buffets are back. That's according to new analysis of the earnings at various buffet chains across the country. So let's get into the details here. Apparently they're making a comeback in Vegas, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Apparently, according to the New York Times in their very poetic language, they argue that buffets speak to an American dining culture that prizes consistency, value, and choice. They can make people of modest means feel rich, if just for an hour or two. They provide culinary roadmaps for recent immigrants and culinary tourism for those who haven't traveled much. A buffet can be as communal as a church picnic. Kim Severson needs to calm down a little bit, okay? People like them because there's a lot of options for relatively little money.
I've never been to a church picnic and I love buffets. You're never gonna not get me to go to one. But let me break this down. But she's not wrong about the initial description. I don't know about consistency.
Yeah, consistency is an interesting word to use in the context of buffets.
Yeah, you don't often get consistency in buffets. But the other two are definitely true. One is choice. I never get why people don't always go to a buffet.
Because they can be gross. Like people are gross. That's the problem, right? No. Like you want to consume food that has been handled by as few people as possible.
Yeah, I hear you.
And people love to get their hands on everything.
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm gonna come back to that. I'm gonna come back to it because actually it's a part of the story. But overall, why would I just want to eat one thing if I could have 100 things? And of the 100 things, I don't have to eat all 100. I can pick and choose like in tiny portions of like 8 things.
It's called tapas.
Yeah, it's called tapas, mezes, appetizers.
God, mezes are the best.
Yes, and what is a buffet but tons and tons of mezes?
No, that's not what buffets are. Buffets are like full blown like entrees.
Who cares? Yeah. I don't have the whole things. What am I gonna get filled on one thing? I'm not a rookie when it comes to buffets, okay?
What's your strategy?
My strategy is I take tiny little pieces. You know what I do? I start with the desserts. Okay.
Just desserts.
Okay, so I take a tiny bit of dessert, not the full dessert, just a little, like get a taste, okay? Start your palate out nice and fun way. Then I go and I get little pieces of everything.
Little nuggies.
That's right. And I fill my plate up with like 10 different things.
Oh God.
So, but why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? So it's individual choice for the person, but it's also when you think about a family, it's critical because it's hard to agree. What do you want?
That's so true, yeah.
And the kids love the buffets because it's got ice cream, it's got this, they can get the pizza, they can get the mac and cheese, right? Depending on the buffet, obviously. The parents also love it because they can get the crab legs, etc. So it's got options. It's got all the food instead of some of the food. I just can't understand why you wouldn't love buffets, except for the point that Anna made, which then goes to the heart of the story. It turns out the high-end buffets are doing really well and they're back, but the COVID killed a lot of the low-end buffets, which people were worried about.
So Hometown Buffet, which is or was a chain of buffet restaurants, ended up filing for bankruptcy in 2021 because COVID did a number on them. There was a period of time when buffets were kind of out of style in Vegas, but they're experiencing a reemergence. So the Bellagio buffet came back and it's apparently doing really well. Same with the buffet over at Caesar's Palace. Golden Corral, for instance, is doing really well right now. The chief executive for Golden Corral said this: the media called buffets zombie companies. We didn't know we were dead. But we're the comeback kids. Year to date, we're running about 20% up. So they're doing well in that regard too. And look, it is, not only do you have many options when you go to a buffet, it's also a more cost-effective way to go out to eat with a family.
Oh, come on, guys, think about that. For like at 20 bucks at Golden Corral, you could have like 18 different kinds of food. So I just don't see the downside. In fact, this is a great phenomenon because it weeded out the ones that weren't that good, right?
Oh, look at you, invisible hand of the market,
yeah, but kinda. I mean, look, I'll tip my 2 strong coffee to Hometown Buffet.
Oh my God.
Okay, but
by the way, my dad loved Hometown Buffet.
I love Sizzler, so.
Oh, Sizzler.
Yeah.
Does Sizzler still exist?
Yeah. I've seen it in a couple of places, and I even went recently. I took the family, and I'm like, "This is where we used to go." And they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah. What are you talking about? This is great." So, but the strong have survived. The weak ass buffets, and it's not like I haven't gotten sick at a buffet. Let's keep it real, okay? So the concerns are not unwarranted.
God, so disgusting.
But it was always at a super low end buffet, right?
So. Remember how earlier in the show I said that people in news should probably avoid doing irresponsible speculation?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, so I'm about to engage in irresponsible speculation.
Fun.
But let me be clear, it is speculation and I have zero evidence of this. The only evidence I have is how I feel anytime I eat at a buffet. I think they put something in the food to make you full faster.
Ooh,
because like, I'll take a few nibbles of something and I'm like, oh! Like I'm so full, I can't walk.
Okay, so that's an interesting speculation, but that's might be because you're a rookie. As they explained in this New York Times article, they're like immigrant families, and you're from an immigrant family, but maybe you didn't get this, that have a culture where they are more resource constrained, so they're really worried about it. And I come from one of those cultures, got to eat everything on your plate. When they go to a buffet, they warn the kids, don't eat the rice or the noodles, that'll get you full quicker, okay? It's a trick. Eat the other stuff so you can eat more food, okay? So maybe you're a buffet novice, and that's really your problem.
I would go straight for the mac and cheese.
See?
So that makes sense. But I mean, I have had many nights with mac and cheese, and I can eat a considerable amount of it without feeling the way I do after eating mac and cheese at a buffet.
Yeah, I don't believe your speculation, but I really enjoy it.
Right.
Okay.
It's a good conspiracy theory.
I want to say one more thing about this. So I think that there's one other factor, and they mentioned it in the story too. As poetic as she was, she did a thorough job with this story, okay? And they had good facts too. For the high-end ones, like the ones in Vegas, it kind of makes you feel rich.
It does, does, because they have, look, the only time I've enjoyed a buffet has been at Vegas, and it's because if it's a good buffet in Vegas, a high-end buffet, you've got like crab leg mountains and like chocolate fondue fountains and like, I don't know. It's special.
100%, look, it's not like it's cheap, it's like 80 bucks roughly. But look, if you live in LA, at 80 bucks is like 2 sandwiches and a couple of drinks, right? So, but for the $80, you get your money's worth because you feel like a king. You're like, look at all this amazing food. So
you know that some people wait as long as 2 hours in line to get into those Vegas buffets?
That's the only problem. I can't do that.
I think that is an abomination. And like in America, especially at a place like Vegas, you're drowning in food. Like you can't turn a corner without being confronted by a food product, okay? No one should be waiting to eat anywhere in Vegas.
So there's somebody who works at TYT who has read a book on the best way to go to Disneyland, the most efficient route through the park okay, to get the most amount of rides in your time. I could write a book on the most efficient way to eat at buffets. Okay, you're not gonna be a rookie and go in the morning on a weekend, are you? Please tell me you're not doing that.
You gotta go on a Monday or maybe a Tuesday.
Yes.
But Wednesday it starts to get a little dicey at the amusement parks.
Look, read my book, tyt.com/justice. Okay, it's not in that book, but still, one day. Justice is coming because the buffets are back. Justice and the shrimp are coming. All right, guys, a bonus episode. You guys are gonna love it. Barbie houses are back too, apparently. tyt.com/join or hit the join button below. We're gonna have fun there. We'll see you there.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth.